Just give me a thumbs up, Paul, when it's ready to go, or when
Yeah. Either way. I was ready to kick it off.
you're good.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for being here. I'm gonna call the meeting back out of recess. So we'll resume where we left off. And with that, let's start with salute the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Perfect. Do we have previous minutes?
Yes, they should have been emailed to everybody.
Yep.
But not, they're not printed out though.
Nope.
Okay, they were just on the email.
Yes,
So did everyone get a chance hopefully to review last meeting's minutes?
I just did just a few minutes ago.
Well, good. You reviewed them. That's good. So what we'll do is, we'll have a vote for approving those previous minutes. All those in favor, raise your right hand and say aye. All those opposed, left hand, say nay. Nope. Okay. Unanimous approval of the minutes. Do we have any public comments? None? All right. Moving right along. With that, then I will pass it over to Cease to continue with the 24-25 budget.
yeah, so we'll, again, we have presentation, but obviously we're gonna be going through a few documents, so if we go to the next slide, what we're going to share with you tonight is just a continuation of the budget process. We did share some information, so we will go through some of those slides with you. We will do a review of the question and answers as well. We did have a few more come in, and so we'll wanna talk through those, and then obviously discussion as we lead into our next meeting, which would be in June. We do have a budget that is prepared for you, although I will say it is prepared, but we will probably come back again in June with a little slightly different one because of some of the things that we're gonna talk through today. Because things just keep changing. I'll just put it that way. So I think as we've shared with everyone, this is going to be all the way up and maybe even through the end of June, based off of some of the things that we've received and have learned and are still learning. So I'm just gonna remind everybody to stay calm, be flexible, because there are still a lot of moving parts as we go through the rest of obviously this month and into June, when the state will at some point before the 30th of June, hopefully before that, to pass a budget so that we can pass a budget. As we shared before, if we do need to, and with some of the things that we will share today, I'm not gonna say that we may not need to pull a meeting in July again. So I just wanna be transparent about that with some of the still moving parts, both probably not so much on the state level, maybe a few there, but more on the federal level, which we talked about yesterday, last time we were together. So that's just sort of an overview of what we're going to go through today. All right, Cease.
So what Paula emailed to you and may have printed copies for you all is the Central School District 25-26 proposed budget. This has the lengthy introduction. That's what we're gonna go through here. We won't say everything that's there because that's general information that we provide to the public, but then we'll get into a few of the actual fund budgets that we have preliminarily balanced. And talk to you about where we are. And I think most of the good information may come for you actually from your own questions. So when we get there, we can have a more robust discussion. The first thing we start off with in the introduction is really always our strategic plan and goals. And Jen, if you just want to kind of
Yeah, so we really,
a little bit that in
Yep.
the integrated plan.
absolutely. So a lot of our budget is based and built around the 4 strategic goals. Obviously, student growth and achievement, because that's our top priority, and we want students that are engaged, supported, and challenged, so that they can find that pathway for college, career, and community. We want families involved and engaged, and that can look different from every household, but we just want to make sure that we have that continuation of family involvement within every student's education. And then we'll sort of do this. We can't do this alone, and I'll be honest, I was just coming out of a meeting tied to some of that, and so I'll share a little bit more about just how important our community partners are gonna need to be as we move forward, and then obviously our staff, we couldn't do this each and every day without the leadership and their continuous improvement. So those are the 4 areas. We talk a lot in the budget about additional grants. You're gonna hear us reference what's called the integrated plan. If you've watched board meetings before, we have shared some of the. Those consist of really focusing on attendance, everyday matters, high school success, which is a specific grant for high school only, the student investment account, which is the Student Success Act. Again, that gives us, it's probably the second most flexible fund that we have. We also have an early literacy success grant. With even that right now, we're going to talk a little bit more, because right now the funding, if it stays as is versus what the governor's budget is proposed, that's a $200,000 swing from a financial end. So some of the key pieces, but there are still moving parts that we have that we don't have answers to. Again, we're hoping that as we get through the next month, that some of that will be clearer moving forward. But right now, I'll just say it's murky gray and some of the things that we're having to work through as well. And then obviously we have several CTE grants, career and technical education, and then we are going to talk a little bit about federal funding and what that looks like, because I'm going to say we've done a semi-stress test that we want to walk the budget committee through with some of the things that we are still foresee happening. I'll just put it that way, but not clear yet either on that end. So that's a little bit of just really the focusing funds and areas that we are focusing on in the budget today.
So the format and organization, and this information is on the introduction page 3, including this blue-orange pie chart. Explains about all of the funds that we do have budgeted. We obviously, the largest portion in the pie chart, the general fund, is 65% of all the money that we are here to talk to you about. The special revenue funds in orange, that is all of our grant money, whether it's state money, state grants, federal grants, if we got local grants, but it is also our student fundraising accounts and various other small funds that we track. So those are the special revenue funds. Our third largest fund then, it's getting kind of low, is contingency and reserves, and that is in the general fund, but we also have some contingencies in other funds. In the past, we put some of our capital expenditure money in a fund, in a reserve or contingency. We have debt service that we carry over year to year, some of the money to be able to pay our debt. So that's what the contingency and reserve funds are across all other areas. The debt service fund in gold is not only our general obligation bonds that we pay for capital improvements we have made in the past, but we also carry leases on school buses. And so that is also a separate debt service fund. And then a little tiny sliver there for our capital projects. So this year, our This version of the general fund is 49,413,793, which is only an increase of a little over $500,000. As you'll see, that's leading us with some of our costs for some of the cuts that we'll be talking about. And the total of all funds is 66,221,480 in this version. That is less than the adopted budget last year. Part of that last year still had ESSER, our federal COVID-19 pandemic response dollars in it. And we have done a large spend down of capital funds this year for the board approved project to replace our turf and track at the high school stadium. And so next year, we are not anticipating to be able to build that money up again. So that is why we are down. To go through the process, just sort of briefly, page 4. So initially, the superintendent, our district leadership, and the leadership in all of our buildings prepare a budget. Our budget committee here obviously reviews the proposed budget, gathers feedback, and then eventually you will be asked at the June meeting to approve a total budget, tax levy amounts, and approve our permanent tax rate. So that will be in June, and then the board will have a public hearing on that budget and formally adopt the budget.
I would add, I want to be clear, we are still in this process. So we are still working with buildings. We are still working with union leadership. There is still a lot of moving parts. So we are giving you a budget as required by law. But we are still working through some things with again, we've had some good things. Attendance have gone up a little bit. I don't know that we're going to see that much of a difference in our financial state, but there are some things that we are still working through. Both unions are very involved. We met extensively last week with classified. We have a meeting tomorrow with our licensed union. So again, that leadership is also being informed on some of the things that we're having to work through from the budget process as we move forward. So again, a lot of moving parts. So I'm going to keep saying that because there is still, even as we go through June and into July, based off a couple emails I received today, there could still be a lot of moving parts. I'm going to say more at the federal level. I think we'll have a better state picture here in the next few weeks. I'm going to say middle of June.
They have to
They have to get out
of the
get another,
building.
or open another session, which I'm not hearing that is going to happen. So at this point, we're hoping by the middle of June that they have some sort of budget for us to be able to do that. I think the federal is still in moving. I'll just put it that way. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but we are still heavily involved with everyone in the school district as we move forward.
I have a question. Right under the first little arrow, under the financial policies and practices, right at the end of that sentence, it says, without having to purchase tax anticipation notes. What are those?
So, if we felt we were going to run out of money,
Yes.
either before the end of June, and we still need to make a payroll in June, or if we felt we would have enough money to get through June, maybe July and August, a big portion of the general fund is property taxes. The big bulk of our property taxes come in November. So there are times, many of my colleagues in other districts start to get concerned that they're not going to end up with enough carry-in, enough money left from this year to get them through to November. They can go out and you've heard it's a loan. In anticipation of receiving taxes, which we will receive in November, we're going to borrow the money now and pay it back with interest in November. So
Where do you get
you're
the loan?
it's a loan based on the full faith and credit of the district paying it back with taxes.
And where do you get a loan like that?
That, not hard, I don't know, commercial banker.
Yeah, I was,
They-
I'm sure someone would
Can you
make a
just go
loan.
into Mace, for
Yeah,
instance,
they,
and say,
yeah,
But
they,
there is definitely
People that-
commercial banks that like to lend to
Okay.
private entities, or I'm sorry, public sector, because you have that full faith.
Right.
you know,
Really
and
low risk, so.
yeah, we're a low risk, we're gonna
But I-
get the property
has the
taxes.
I
school
would
district
think it
ever
would
had
not
to do
be-
that?
A
Has this-
lower interest rate, it would probably be kind of a normal.
Oh,
interest
yeah,
rate.
no, it's, yeah,
But for them,
It's
it's
a
a
normal
good deal
interest
because
rate,
it's a
yeah.
low risk.
yeah.
Have we ever, has the school district ever had to do this in the
I don't
past?
believe, I don't know.
Not in
Not in my
my
tenure,
experience,
or her
but
tenure.
not in my memory of hearing about it.
Is this what, like a neighboring district had
We
to do
did.
a couple?
We have
years ago?
several, yes,
I know.
we have several school districts around us that have had that situation happen to them in the last couple of years, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
Jan is saying yes, she's our veteran here, and I believe that is true, because there was a year when ODE came out and said, you're not even gonna get your May payment. Sorry, we ran
Yeah,
a
I do.
statement out of money, therefore, every district
Was-
had to get a tax anticipation.
Oh, wow.
No.
Okay.
So that, it has happened, but that is why our board policy requires us to manage, to keep that amount of money at the end to carry us through. Yeah, good question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good question.
And you have seen several school districts around us be in those situations.
Oh, yeah.
Well, so-
CSD and I are very fiscally conservative, and so we, again, even though we are having to do cuts this year, again, some of that we knew was coming. I think some of that is because our enrollment's down, we're needing to right the ship a little bit in regards to staffing, those types of things, which we are, in the process of doing to get us to this balanced budget.
Yeah, there's some, in our valley, there's some horrible stories about districts that woke up in April and found out they didn't have money to operate.
Yeah.
So just to clarify again, with the comments that we may be going into July. My understanding is that we would still approve
Yes,
a budget, it would have a public notice, and the group, the greater board would then ultimately ratify it.
Correct.
And then if we had to make a change in July, we'd come back.
Yes.
We'd have to go through those same steps again. And we'd only do that if there were material enough changes that we needed to, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so does everybody
I think that's a
understand
very
that
good point.
process?
Yeah.
We
We hope to keep you better informed throughout the year, but we hope we don't have to call all of you back to change the budget, because that would mean a 10% change in any fund, which
Which would be good,
would be pretty significant.
but if we do have to do it in July, as long as everybody's prepared, that's an eventuality.
Better.
Yeah, as long as it's 10% higher, I mean.
it's not gonna be 10% higher, that's the concern right now from our
Well,
side.
you're talking to, but it had, anything under 10%, the board can do it without
Correct.
us. So what I'm saying is, if it's, gonna have to be pretty major to be over 10% to bring the whole, that I understand. So,
Thank you.
Yep. I love that somebody read all my little bullet points. So, and this is where we mentioned some of that. Then on page 5, the budget priorities and focus, and Jen, you wanna kind of,
Yeah, and again, we went over a few of these, but we'll just do, obviously, first and foremost, all the legal requirements in all the areas. We have contractual obligations with not only with our unions, but we do have agreements with our administrators and confidential supervisory. That includes, obviously longevity steps, pay increases, and salary and benefits. We're gonna continue to support special education and the needs of our students. And we have seen, and there's some things we'll show you, which includes our special education staff, because that continues to increase. We do want to stay focused and have both nurses and mental health professionals in each of the buildings. That's an important piece with the work that's done. Again, obviously, investing in student growth and achievement with the purchase of math curriculum K-8. From that perspective, And then, there's some pieces that really we're having to work through that's right now priorities that are not fully funded. So we're in the process and have started communication with staff district-wide where there's going to be cuts. Some of that is done through attrition. So as an example, teacher retires or goes to a new school district, we are going to not fill that position. So that's what we mean by that. So we've been able to do some of that way. We have had to do some cuts, and so we are and continue to meet with staff to share that messaging, which is not fun for anyone. It's been really hard couple of weeks in the district when you have to do that. And so we are continuing to work through those pieces. I think the other thing is the president proposed to eliminate Title II funding. That funding we use a lot to do our professional development. So that is where we were going to spend our money to do the math, right? We adopted it, we're gonna buy the materials, but we still need to train our staff in the math curriculum because it's new. And that's where that money is spent. We believe, I think that's I'll just say this. The question I'm asking right now, normally, and I'm gonna take a little bit of time to do this, normally our federal funds go through September, and correct me if I do any date wrong, September 30th of 2025. So we're really October to September for federal funds. At this moment, the question I keep asking is, we are allowed, prior administrations have allowed carryover for a year. That is a question I have asked. If I have any money that is left over, even a small portion of that, is that going to be able to be carried over through September 30th, 2026? No one can answer that right now. So if I have, again, I'm making this up, 100,000 left in Title II that we could use potentially for math, I'm trying to get that answer of, is it going to be allowed to have carryover, or as of September 30, are they going to pull all those funds back? So when we talk about federal funding, that is right now, we don't know. We continue to ask those questions, but don't have a clear picture of that right now. I did receive an email today from ODE saying they're hoping to have answers end of June, early July for us. So that's the complicated part right now. So we're gonna give you a budget of what we think we have both in state and federal, but there could be some of those changes. So Title II is part of our professional development where we spend a lot of that. I think the harder one for us is number 3. The president's proposed budget also eliminates Title IV. And that will eliminate our before and after school programming. That is for probably close to, I'm gonna say 600 to 700 kids. That we do extended learning. That's, again, we call it expanded learning before and after school programming, where we're not only doing reading and math, but we do some fun things with the students, STEM, different things to keep them engaged in school. This will be a very large hit for our community. So I think that's really important. That's why we're just publicly saying that. If people, I think we're saying this because people need to start looking into before and after school care, because at this point, we don't know. We could maybe have funds through the middle of the year. I'm gonna start some conversations with our partners, but I think funding is becoming a little bit more difficult right now. And so I want the community to be prepared that the schools will not have programming or before and after school moving into the 25-26 school year. Our goal is that maybe that will change, and then we can, work through those pieces and hopefully by this summer be able to put some things together. But I think this is probably the largest hit when we talked about from a federal fund. These 2 funds are the 2 largest ones that are being eliminated that are gonna impact us.
What are they again?
Yeah, Title II,
Okay,
Yep.
Title II.
Title II, which is really focused on our professional development.
What's the name of it? Just Title II?
Title II, yeah.
There's several parts
Yeah.
to every one of these, and so.
We can give more details of that.
And what's the other one?
Title IV, and there's different sections. So there's Title IV-A, there's Title IV-B, but what we can do is in the next FAQ, we'll spell that out for the committee.
That would be good.
I have a question. With Title II funding, you said, Dr. Kapitsa, that you don't know if they'll allow you to do the carry forward or not.
Correct.
And so how much money do we have left right now, and would we be able to spend it by September before we had to give it
Well,
back?
yes, we will, once we have a better idea, if we have to spend it, we will spend it.
You'll have time, I guess, is my point.
Yes.
There won't be like time.
Well,
Till September.
So till September 30th. So right
Yeah.
now, we are planning as best as possible to spend that.
Okay.
Because we have, no one can give me an answer. All I keep getting from either the state or even key people that, lobbyists, et cetera. And I've asked, I'll be honest, I have good relationships with one of our representatives and their staff. I've made a couple phone calls to say, can you please, I know there's a lot going on and this may feel low to you all, but this is a high priority for our community. We just need an understanding of what, is it gonna get cut off or not? Any lead you can give us is gonna be helpful in our planning, either to spend it all the way down,
Mhm.
which we will. Or can we make it through part of next year and what that looks like? We also just received, there is a competitive grant that was just launched. We are looking into that. There could be
It's a state grant.
sort of, yes, it's state and federal.
Federally,
Yeah, it's state, federally funded, but from the state. So there's moving parts of that because some of that could help us with our professional learning, but that is a competitive grant. So that doesn't mean just because we apply, doesn't mean we could get it. So
And-
we're still working through those.
Obviously, it's difficult to do professional development over the summer months, so that one's a little
Yeah.
tougher.
Our staff needs a break.
No, that's why I was saying, would it
That's
be
why
doable to do?
Some of them we can spend if we can buy supplies, materials, things, so, yeah.
But if you spend the money, they can't, I don't know, bill you for it then? If the, what you're talking about, like if there's, if you all of a sudden had,
That's why we're trying to get clarity on the carryover, right? Because I think,
well, right,
That's
yeah,
part
but I
of-
mean, if you spend it and.
Then they ask for it back, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it all of Title II-A that's
Yes.
portion 2A and 2B and?
yes,
Mm.
yes.
Okay.
So right now, what's being shared with us is in the budget, Title I, which is tied to poverty. And then IDEA, which is tied to students experiencing disabilities. Those two funds will be flat. We have people in Title I-A, so in the long run, it's not gonna keep up with what our raise is and what we're required based on our contract, so that will get then moved over to the general fund. So anything we can't cover federally comes into the general fund. Or if we can put it into special grants, because sometimes we can do that based on the grants, other times it's not allowed. So Title I-A we're hearing is going to be flat funded, and then IDEA, which is with students experiencing disabilities, that will be flat as well. So again, same thing. If we have several people in there, if we come short based off of steps, longevity and raises, then that part of their salaries would go to the general fund and have to cover, which we've built all that. That's part of what's in the budget at this moment.
And that's what my clarifying question is. I read that section that was Title I and IDEA flat but I thought the assumption was Title II, III, IV eliminated, but then I thought I saw amounts for ELO or extended learning in the budget. So it wasn't clear if you included it or I was misunderstanding it, or if it really was not in the budget.
I think that's the hard part. There are some things that are in there,
Okay.
but
And maybe because going through September 30th.
correct.
Oh, okay.
That they're
I didn't think about that.
potentially,
That's
our
hard part.
biggest problem is we finalize this to send it to you and then we've already made changes in our mind. So
We have like 6 changes.
at the
we saw.
final, I cannot
There's a lot going
which
on.
version of my head is in this slide. But that was one consideration, was we at least are pretty sure we'll get to spend through September 30th.
Yes.
In which case we can do summer programming. Oh yeah, Kinder Jumpstart
Yeah.
and things like that. And get some program wrap up done.
And is contracting for the funds and paying in advance considered spending it? Or do you actually have to do the services? Yeah, that's the problem.
We, all of these grants are on a claim basis. We spend the money, then we put in a claim, and then the state puts in its claim to the feds. Yeah.
Well, let me, just quick rundown, what we're talking here happens in every industry. And if you've noticed that everybody is doing new sidewalks and curbs and everything else, all that money has to be spent by June 30th. No continuation, no carryover on any of the federal projects or sidewalks or any transportation costs. So that's why you see all these little projects going like crazy, and then mainly they're running out of money as of June 30th.
Yeah.
There's no carryover.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to get clarified.
Right, that's what you're trying to get.
Yeah, because again, that's the question that, again, both to our key people from who I have connections within the state, but again, as I said, I have reached out to the staff of one of our representatives federally to say, hey, can you just keep pushing this forward so we can have an understanding, the sooner would be better. But we're sort of planning for both, I'll just put it that way.
That's what you do.
Yep.
I have a quick, I know the answer, I'm positive. I'm assuming that with these cuts, what holding the line of the current funding is in terms of next year, the unfunded mandates for IDEA particularly, I assume are still in place. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, I'm gonna say yes. I will say, I think there's a lot of moving parts on reporting that I don't have, that we're continuing to work through.
Okay.
I want to be clear, state reporting very clear what we're responsible for. I'm not sure moving forward what federal reporting through the state will look like.
Okay.
And so it's a really good question because there's things that we're doing now that we wonder, will we be reporting on them next year? So I think that's still moving as well. Of what is going to be required. A lot of that's going to come from the Oregon Department of Education saying, hey, here's what your federal reporting will look like moving forward. But I don't think they have clarity on that either.
You want to check?
Yeah, so, the other thing is, so some good news, if you have watched board meetings or have seen any of that, we have put in for 2 grants, through what's called the E-rate, which is through the FCC. There's a category 1, which is really building a new infrastructure, for our technology. The second is dealing with the hardware. So you'll hear me say things like switches or Wi-Fi. We have received funding for both. So the total amount is a little under, I think it's roughly about $1.7 million. Most of that is for rebuilding of the infrastructure, and then about 400,000 of that is for equipment,
Just building the network.
which is building the network of that structure, of that infrastructure. So that's gonna that's a year-long process. I think we'll get the hardware equipment sooner than later. So our goal is we can start getting that and start putting that in place over the summer. The actual new infrastructure of our internet is gonna take a full year. And so we're excited about that. But that doesn't take care of everything. So one example is we've been wanting to move to newer upgraded servers. Servers are expensive. Are our servers fine? Yes. But again, they're just older servers. So we're just having to work through that. Right now, as an example, there's not money in the budget for servers. We're gonna work off of what we have, and then obviously the upgrades with the equipment and the infrastructure would be able to do that. So when we talk about not fully funded, that's an example, really on the technology upgrades, because we are doing that. And so it will be a huge improvement, but that doesn't mean that we're gonna get everything there. And then with the summer school funding being funded completely, so we have $455,000, we are building Kinder Jumpstart. Just to give you an example, Kinder Jumpstart is a couple weeks for kids to come into the school. Kindergarten is a hard transition for some children. And so we spend 2 weeks getting them in, doing some routines, We do that really the first couple weeks of school, but we do open that up at every school, and so we're working on building that. We will be able to do that. That was one of the things we weren't sure we were gonna be able to do this next year, so we're excited to do that. It's hard, we're a little bit behind, but because we've done it now 2 years, I think we've got really, it's built. It's just now getting dates and those types of things set up. So more to come just on that, but we are able to fund that
With the
moving
servers,
forward.
are you able to apply for another grant, or since we've already gotten it, then we can't get it again? Like to do the servers later or something?
Servers are not part of the FCCE rate, so
So
that
you
will.
can't get it ever.
Well, I will say this, I think we're gonna start having conversations about looking at other grants that could potentially do that. I'm gonna say that that's gonna be slim, but I think we're gonna still try and figure out if there's ways we can get money to do that, or in the future, okay, how much does one cost? Can we budget it for the following year so we can then get that and just start moving in that direction?
And E-rate is under attack by the current administration as well, so
But,
currently they pay my net bill every month, and that might go away. So
you go ahead.
just reminders for some quick facts. Our state school fund is made up of our state personal and business income taxes. So national economy struggles, we've all heard about Oregon's dependency on trade and some of the things that are creating some potential headwinds in the national economy that will affect the state. And then, so of course, our share of the state school fund is based on enrollment, attendance, and our local property taxes, which are subtracted from our state school fund allotment. The revenue property taxes are increasing locally, which is a good thing. We have interest on investments, and if you all have any money invested, that rate has stayed pretty good. Our money is all invested with the Oregon Treasury, and that market rate on basically our money market has continued to hold, which has been good, but we'll see how that goes. And then again, our state school fund allocation for the current year is going up. Our expenditures, the headwinds we talked about, are contracted increases in payroll, both the wages and our payroll costs, our increase in our pension obligations, workers' comp, health insurance, and unemployment insurance.
And those are the largest buckets, right? As we shared before, they make up the largest amount of our budget.
When you say the state school fund is increasing by 545, is that our portion from the 10.2 to the 11.3?
That's our portion from last year, yes, to the current year, and we're using 11.4.
Okay.
Yeah,
They do advise us to do that.
Okay.
but it's also factored by our losing attendance, so.
And I will say, again, we've been advised to build off of 11.4 because that's what the Ways and Means has put in place. We're gonna show you the next slide, which is tied to the June forecast. If that number changes from 11.4, let's say they move it back to 11.36, then we are going to have to do more adjustments, so.
What's our legislative aid over there smiling about? I don't know.
So, we're hoping that it stays
His
at,
brain, he
at,
knows.
yeah,
He's
we're hoping
good
it stays at
his brain.
11.4,
This for 2 years.
correct?
Yeah, for 2 years.
And we get how much the first year? A percentage,
51%. We have
51 is-
49% the first year and
51 the second.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if you all were glued to your television screens or computer screens early on last Wednesday, May 14th. I was. The state's, what they call the June economic forecast, although they release it in May, was released last week. The 2027 state general fund and lottery resources, because that's where schools get the bulk of their state money, from the state general fund and lottery money, is down almost 800 million from the March forecast.
Keep gambling.
Keep gambling. Get out there, people. Do your part.
Just make sure you lose, right?
Yeah, you gotta lose. If you win, we're done help. 2025, 27 corporate activity tax. The corporate activity tax was the basis of the Student Success Act. The Student Success Act funds the student investment account, which is the couple of $1 million we get to spend, but it is a lot of other programs, including some of the summer programs and other things. That forecast is down $44.4 million from March. So what does this mean? More pressure on all state priorities, right? The stated priorities of a transportation package, of housing, of behavioral health investments, all of those are facing this decline, as well as potentially the state school fund. What we are more certain we will have to deal with is that some of the additional legislation to bring money, for example, we'll go through it. There was other legislation that would have potentially increased special funding to us. Pretty sure those won't be funded at this, with this kind of gloomy forecast. We also know that every organization, every in the state facing the loss of federal funds, Head Starts, for example, we all know that those are federally funded, and losing their federal funding, they are going to be looking at the state for additional funding. So there's lots of pressure on our legislators with this forecast. So again, just a few details about state school fund. I think we've talked about this. I don't know how much we need to talk about this, that it's based on our student population. And then also each year the state adjusts our payments from the prior year, called the look back. And we have received our look back for last year's funding. And overall, it's because our enrollment and factored for attendance has declined so significantly. They took back with total between a couple of different things in the general fund of around 700,000.
And she says significantly, I want to be clear, there are other districts that are losing much more enrollment than we are. So again, as hard as this is, I think districts surrounding us, Dallas, Corvallis, are losing more kids than we are, when you look at the overall percentages across that. So this is not anything that is just to Central School District. This is districts around us, this is districts across the state. I think you're seeing that also national. That's a national trend that's happening from a public school perspective.
And we'll go through that. We added that to your FAQ tonight. We'll talk about that when we get there. So end fund balance is important. That is the amount of money we don't spend this year that we hope to carry forward. And this is just a little thing to show you about where we've been with that in the past. We have tried to, this is only the general funds, this doesn't include all the grants and the carryovers and things like that. So this is, and this is not in.
Yeah, this is.
I don't think it's
This is in the packet.
No.
Yeah, this was, Emily wants you to know for sure. We are looking at conservatively, a significant drop in what we will have to start with next year.
Whoa.
This is, even though this is the middle of May, so end of June isn't too far away. We have several things that will take place over the coming month and a half. This number, I'll be watching every time I pay the bills. We will tell you that our principals, our program administrators, everybody has really buckled down. They are being very, very, very conscientious, knowing that this is important. The less we spend for the rest of the year, the sort of better cushion we have.
And I will say, we've been doing that for several months as we started to see the landscape and we're having conversations with principals and program directors. It's really like the need versus the want versus required. And so having that honest conversation and being clear, if you need, you know, if it is a requirement for a teacher to be able to get through the year, let's purchase it and move forward. If it's more of a want, we're asking everyone to be conservative right now in their spending, excuse me. And they've done a really good job of that. So I do want to acknowledge everyone out there that is running buildings and programming and doing a really good job of being fiscally responsible.
Updates on that. Kind of have the word here. Okay, so updates on legislation. Since we were talking about that, we'll just kind of update on this.
Yeah, so here's where it gets tricky. So right now, there are two bills, House Bill 2953 and House Bill 2448, that we were hoping would come from the state. One, you've heard me talk about, we have 15% of our students experiencing a disability, yet we are only receiving 11% of that. So that's the cap. So it's capped at that. We were hoping to have that increased. The other one is the high cost disability, and you see, I think it is on page 11 in the document that we shared with you, looking at the high cost disability grant. There is really, we've been hoping that we would get more. So you've heard me talk about, for every dollar we spend, 3 years ago, we got 56 cents. Last year, we got 40 cents. And this year, we're probably, it ranges right now.
We're starting at 38.
Yeah, we originally, when we first got it, was 28. And then I don't know that they calculated it correctly, so we are at 38 cents per dollar. We were hoping to get some additional funds to shift that. With the forecast that came out, we do not believe that that is going to happen. We will continue to advocate, because if we could get an additional 50 million, 100 million into high cost, I think that is going to help school districts. So again, you want to advocate to your legislators if that's what you want to do, public as well. That's an area where that could happen. I do think that that's going to be difficult. We were hoping to potentially have between 200 and 300 million. It would be great if we could get maybe 100. But I don't know that that's going to be realistic with all the other, as he said, all the other things that the legislature is having to deal with. School meals is still in jeopardy. So although there were some things we saw today that we're needing to follow up on, because something was signed, but I don't know that that's clearly.
Can you check on that one for me, Antonio? 3435 House Bill, because that might have actually passed.
Yeah, and we didn't have a chance to look at that.
Meals for all. Meals
Yeah.
for all.
We, obviously, the summer learning has been great. So we are applied for and have funds that we will get for 455,000. That's great, because we have built a really good summer school programming. I think that's helping not have summer slide and reading and some of the good things there. Again, as I shared earlier, number 4, House Bill 3040, that early literacy initiative. If it's flat funded versus what the governor's budget proposal is, that's a $200,000 swing. I'll just be honest, that's a person. So, you know, that's a big swing that we're just waiting to see. We're hoping that the legislature goes with the governor's budget, because that will be helpful with what we're trying to do on the literacy end. And then again, there's mandated class size. We have a protocol in our licensed agreement. And so our classes will, I'll be honest, our classes will be bigger next year, but it will still be under the class sizes that we have agreed upon. And then if we start to go over those, then we will make adjustments from there. That means enrollment's going up. So then we may be able to hire a teacher, should our enrollment go up over the summer moving forward. So that's, again, wanted to give you a little bit of that update from that perspective. And then, like I said, we've shared a little bit. If you go to the next
Well,
slide.
it's-
Bernice.
and we'll go back to the document, because we didn't really do a slide on this, but, in the document on page 7, we do have a couple of graphs to show you about enrollment, which of course is, how we get our state funding. And, we've talked to you about enrollment, which is a head count that happens on October 1st. And then in March, they give us the first calculation of what our ADM is, both ADMR, which is just that enrollment weighted for attendance, and ADMW, which includes the special weights we get for special populations.
What does ABM mean?
Average daily membership. So that's why it's really about attendance. It is every day, how many of our students are there? And
Present, sitting in a seat.
so ADMW, the light green line on top, is higher because that is actually what we get paid based on. Because we get we get counted extra. This are 11% of our students experiencing disabilities. We get extra they count extra. Our students in poverty count extra. Students who are emerging bilinguals, we get a little bit of an extra count for that.
Do they actually count the specific student, or is it just a general statistic?
No, it's a specific student. We upload all of our data.
So it hurts us more, quote unquote, if a student who is not identified in these special categories is absent versus a student who's identified in the category. Does that make sense?
I don't know if their attendance factors in or if that's just the number.
Okay. That's what I was trying.
It's a percentage, so like
Okay.
we get like a 0.025
Yep.
extra
Yep.
for
those
certain
Got it.
local groups.
I don't know if it's whether or not to five extra, if that student was here 92%
Yeah.
of the time.
That makes sense.
So you can see that trend, how we are now that our enrollment actually is higher than our ADM. We have students on the books, but they are not attending 90% of the time. So our ADMR, which is the average daily membership,
Is down.
is down.
Wait.
But
I will say, working or talking with principals, and we had a meeting last week, and when I meet one-on-one with them, we are moving in, there are some increases across many of the buildings in attendance. So again, I think the buildings are doing a really good job of reaching out to families, or how can we help you get your student to school? I'm gonna continue to say that kids that are at school every day, less issues, less anxiety, right? You miss a couple days, it's really hard to catch up, because we do keep moving forward. And so the more students are in attendance, the stronger they are gonna be academically and socially from that perspective.
and then this,
Yeah.
I have a couple, just.
Yeah.
From, I guess, what I'm seeing online is this is national trend, we're not
Correct.
unique. We're seeing this.
You're talking attendance.
Yeah, attendance.
Yeah.
And then, I think you mentioned in our previous meeting that like, there's some of those hybrid charter, like, schools that some students are thinking for alternative options. Are they also calculated using kind of this, like, system, and then do we know, or can you speak to that a little bit?
yeah, in Oregon, there are public charter schools that have to be sponsored by a district. Their ADM, or their average daily membership, is counted in some ways as part of the district they're a part of, in other ways it is subtracted from the district that sponsors them, they get state funding as well. And they have ADM as well, including for special populations.
If we had a charter school in our district, if we get $11,000 per kid, doesn't it pass through us and then we would keep a percentage of it and then the other amount would then go to the charter school?
Yeah.
But if a kid transfers to like an online school that is separate from the district,
Then they're not counted in the
Not counted at all,
$11,000 at all, anywhere, any
yeah.
district.
So as an example, our online student, and again, there's laws that say we can, I as the superintendent, which I do not do this because I do not think this is good practice. There are laws that say if anyone's over 3% that tries to go out to an online school, I can stop them. I'm not gonna stop them because if you want to go and think that that's a better education for your student, we're not gonna get in your way. The online enrollment for the school district has jumped from, we averaged about 3%. Over the last couple of years, we've moved this year, 6% of students that transfer out are going to an online school.
And then this might be a bigger question than we can answer here, but how is attendance calculated in an online capacity? I had kids
I
on
guess I
a
don't.
computer during COVID and that was different than being.
They're funded differently, so
Okay,
they
so it
don't
doesn't-
fall in, yeah, they don't, some of them are public charter schools,
Yeah.
so you have a handful of online schools that are public charter schools in a school
Yeah.
district, so
It's just,
if that, if a student comes out of district, because we do have out of district students, so anybody that comes in, and on average, I'll get 11,000 for that student, same thing if they're going out.
I think where my mind was going was when a kiddo misses a day because they're at home sick, there's no current way to make that day up by hopping online and doing some sort of still academic piece where they're well enough to do that, or if they are on a vacation, hypothetically, there's no way to make up that time right now.
But if they're
Yeah,
excused,
not
does
in
it
person,
count?
but I don't know how there is a calculation for attendance at the state online schools because
Yeah.
they have ADM. I don't know
Sure.
what it is.
Doesn't matter, if it's
Right.
excused, unexcused, that it doesn't count
It has
as.
to be in a seat.
They
They have to literally be in the seat, and that's why we take, at the elementary, we take attendance in the morning and the afternoon,
Right.
and then obviously the secondaries, we take every period.
And there's no way to recoup, like, once a kiddo falls below that line and they're getting that postcard home on a weekly basis, there's no way to there's no way to improve, there's no way to make up that attendance.
Nope.
From a state perspective.
Yes, I think that's a longer
Yeah,
conversation.
Can
It's
you
very,
clarify?
very different than the previous sit I came
And I
from.
was gonna propose that we take a break because we've been here for an hour.
Okay, perfect.
So unless there's anything we need to wrap up real quick, I was
Nope,
gonna propose.
I think
a
we're-
And I was just gonna say, there is a chart at the bottom of page 7 that is new, and that does show some of those special weights I talked about. And so it shows you how our overall ADM weighted for attendance has changed, but how those special populations have also changed.
And you can finish your question before we
Yeah,
take the break.
remember, when you said 6% transfer out, is that 6%?
Transfer out of online, 6% of those that go out,
So it's not 6% of our 3,000 kids, it's.
correct. Because we have, students that are homeschooled, right? So then you have students that transfer out to other school districts, and then you have students that transfer out to online school. So we've been trying to track that over the last couple of years, especially after coming out of COVID, to see where students are going.
How many students in our district do we have that have transferred to something? Like, if we had them not transfer anywhere, we would have had 3,700 students versus 3,100, like.
We probably would be, and I can go look at that while we're on break, I think I can pull that up. So we have about 100, I'm gonna go back. Flow Analytics, which is the company, when I first got here, gave me a 10-year trend because we wanted to really just see, can we keep pace of where we are? And they've been good. I wanna be clear, the analytics there gave us, we've stayed in the medium to high. We're a little bit lower than what I expected this year, but they also have said very clearly in our district, 80% of the 100% of kids that could be enrolled in the public school come to the public school. 20% of our kids go out to different schools. That's not a normal in a public school, so that's really, that number has stayed pretty strong. So that, if that 20% came back, you know, that's where we would be sitting at probably 3,200
They
students.
said that is typical.
That's typical, yeah, where you have between 15 and 20% of kids that go to private school, private Christian school, online school, homeschool.
If you haven't been seeing it, like the districts overall, not just our district, but districts overall haven't been seeing an increase. It's always been like pre-COVID, it's always been 15 to
I
20% or
I think
post-COVID,
we're
15
seeing,
or 20%.
I'm gonna say we're seeing a shift. So prior to COVID, we had close to, I'm gonna say between 250 and 300 kids in homeschool. That number's decreased. So that number is only about 150, 160. What we've seen it shift to is going online. So online numbers that we are tracking have jumped from about 3% to 6%. So you're seeing that homeschool go down, online go up. So that's really where you're seeing that shift. And then you've got the normal, hey, we're moving, you know, we're staying here, but we want to go to Dallas, or I work in Corvallis, so they're coming with me. We get those requests all the time, and I'm not gonna stop. I want people to go, be educated where they think they're gonna be the most successful.
Great. Well, let's take 10 minutes, so we'll be back here at 7:22. Great.
Now we get our slides.
They're not.